or you can set it down horizontally. It's nice because unlike on the Series X, which has that kind of built-in foot on the bottom, I think this looks equally good either way. So that's what you get inside the box of an Xbox Series S. But what is this console all about? When you look at the Xbox Series S compared to its bigger brother, the Series X, it doesn't look as good. Now that makes sense. At $200 less expensive, you would expect that there to be some compromises, and they go a lot farther than just not having a disk drive. But I think it's a lot more complicated than a few minutes with the console would really lead you to believe. So the top line is this. The Series S has a very similar level of specs to the Series X with one big exception: graphics. So where the Series X has 12 teraflops of performance, the Series S has to get by with 4 teraflops. Now to be clear, that is still significantly better than the console it replaces, the Xbox One S, but it falls behind, at least on paper, the Xbox One X, which for a next-gen console seems like a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow. But that being said, the Series S has a very different goal in life. It is not trying to run games at 4K all the time. Instead, it is really targeting somewhere between 1080p and 1440p. The way they're really setting it up is just like with the original Xbox One, which was very much not really meant to push sort of 4K resolutions until you got up to the One X. Same thing for the Series S. This is to be able to bring all those same features of next gen, but at a lower resolution. Now, if you compare that with the Series X, it is supposed to be the most powerful console, and of course, it will take advantage of that power in a big way. So you're getting 4K 60 on most games compared to that 1080p on the Series S. But regardless of what you hook it up to, the Series S will look good, and it is a major improvement over the One S. Where it's not a clear improvement over, though, is the One X, which is again where you have to temper your expectations. But beyond that, a lot of those same features are all shared. So for example, they both have SSDs. Sure, the Series S has a 512 gig SSD instead of 1 terabyte, but hey, you're spending $200 less money. Now they both do support 120 FPS, but odds are if you're buying the Series S, you're probably a lot more likely to have a 60 Hz TV instead of a brand new OLED or something. Now when it comes to playing games that are fully optimized, right, we're talking about backwards compatibility. We're talking about games which have been designed for the Series S and the Series X. The X, surprise, surprise, looks better. So if you look at the Microsoft specs, they're sort of recommended what they've designed these consoles for. The Series X is designed to run at 4K 60, and the Series S is designed to run games at 1440p 60, right? But these are simply recommendations. A game developer can do whatever they want pretty much. So if you've got a pixel-based game, you could run it at 8K if you really wanted to. I don't think anyone's gonna stop you. But realistically, these numbers aren't quite representative of the kind of experiences you're getting on each of these consoles. So take the Series X for example. Pretty much every game that I've tried so far has a pretty robust 4K 60 FPS mode, right? That's pretty much standard. And some games have support for 120 FPS at 4K or even maybe slightly lower like 1440p, but really solid performance. Now on the Series S, there are a few games that will support these higher frame rates, right? So for example, Gears 5 multiplayer will run at 1080p at 120 FPS, which is awesome. But the thing is, if you do the math here on the differences, while 1440p at 60 sounds great, that would require about half as many pixels as the Series X, but it only has about 1/3 the GPU horsepower, which means that realistically, most games really are going to be running at closer to that 1080p number. Now, of course, there's a thing called dynamic resolution that's been around for a long time, which means that you're always going to get, on at least a lot of games, you're always going to get like the best resolution, so it may be sort of dipping back and forth between 1080p and 1440 or whatever the case is. But regardless, this is a little bit more of a 1080p gaming box, and the Series X is a little bit more of a 4K gaming box. But the thing is, all the building blocks are still there. You still have ray tracing support. You still have support for the spatial audio. You still have all the same things that will make these games look and run well. And because they have the same CPUs, things like, I don't know, GTA 6 should be able to have massive worlds with tons of NPCs. There's a lot of CPU horsepower behind that. It's just simply that the graphics settings won't be quite so elaborate and you simply won't see that same resolution. So the Series S does support backwards compatible games.